morning began as every morning did in Aramont, too bright for comfort. The sun hung motionless in a cloudless sky, pinned there like a coin soldered to blue metal. Nothing cast a shadow. The whitewashed cottages looked cut from paper, their edges sharp and depthless. Even the tallest cypress outside the west gate stood without the faintest outline, as if sketched by a nervous artist who feared the charcoal stick. Yora stepped from the shade of her doorway, shade that had no origin now that her own silhouette had been excised, and squinted at the brilliance. She knew the stories, complete with scripture and smiling counselors, but she still felt an animal unease each dawn, the sense that something important was missing, the way an amputee feels an itch in a phantom limb. "Big day," said her father, emerging behind her. His boots made no scuff in the yellow dust. Without shadows, nothing ever seemed to settle on the ground. It just hovered in the light. "I know." Leora tried to keep her voice level. She was almost 17, old enough to assist in the midsummer maintenance. Her father, Malin the Luminar, was the chief shadow-taker of Aramont. Beneath their house, in a vaulted chamber plated with mirrors, the town's severed shadows quivered in glass urns, packed together like black eels. Twice each year, at solstice and equinox, the council opened a single urn so the people might glimpse the hoarded darkness proof the ritual worked. Proof the sun would stay. They called it reassurance. Leora called it trapped animals. She followed her father along Market Row. Shoppers haggled for peaches and barley bread, while golden light blazed off coin and skin. Leora heard laughter and flirtation, yet every smile looked strained, as if pulled wide by invisible hooks. Fear lurked beneath the varnish of perpetual daylight. At the fountain, Ravel the tanner cupped his palms to drink. Leora lingered, watching water pour through his fingers in liquid silver. When he stood upright, no puddle remained at his feet. Nothing in Aramont could cling to ground that knew no shadow. Ravel noticed her stare. "You'll do well today, Leora. Your father says you're steady." "Steady enough," she murmured. Around Ravel's neck hung a leather pouch the size of a peach pit. Everyone carried one. Inside was a pinch of their original darkness just in case. She hated the phrase, but the council insisted it offered comfort. Ravel lowered his voice. "The glass said storms yesterday." "The glass lies," Leora replied, more sharply than intended. Saying so was mandatory. To predict cloud cover was heresy. Yet privately she wondered if the barometer might at last be honest. Sunrise had felt too hot, the horizon too hazy, and she had dreamt, again, of voluptuous thunderheads massing beyond the valley walls, bearing down on Aramont like siege wagons. Her father called after her, "Come, we're late." They descended the marble steps into the Luminar's hall, torches unlit along the walls. Firelight was forbidden underground. Any flicker could coax shadow from stone. Instead, phosphorescent salts packed in selenite bowls glowed with steady radiance. The Council of Nine stood in semicircle around a long obsidian table. Wives, husbands, lovers, siblings, they'd all offered their shadows decades earlier, yet bore themselves as priests who never doubted doctrine. "Leora," Counselor Isolde said, "the honor is yours. Today you unseal Vault 13. Leora's pulse stuttered. Vault 13 held the oldest batch, the shadows of the founding generation, taken when Aramont broke from the night-bound kingdoms. Rumor claimed they were stronger, almost sentient. She accepted a key ring of polished sunstone. As she touched the warm stone, an image flashed, a corridor lined with mirrors, and at its end a door that pulsed black. She blinked it away, telling herself it was only nerves. Her father guided her down a spiral and into the corridor from her vision. Light salts glimmered. Their own reflections floated alongside them in the mirror panels, ghost clearer because no shadows grounded their forms. Leora could not tell whether the reflections bothered to follow the law of gravity. "Do you ever regret it?" she whispered. He halted. "We've had daylight for 36 years. No frost-killed vines, no wolves venturing close, no moon-mad sickness." Regret would be a luxury. He touched her shoulder. Remember, the shadows below want what every creature wants, a place in the sun. Denying them is mercy, not cruelty. They'd burn if we let them out. The lie tasted like lime on her tongue, but she nodded, slipped the sunstone key into Vault 13's lock, and turned. A hiss as if the door exhaled. Warmth fled the corridor. For an instant, Leora saw nothing, only a dark so absolute it felt thick. Then the salts brightened, and she glimpsed movement, coils, tendrils, a slick of ink wavering in watery suspension. The smell was sour copper, like old blood. Sullen whispers poured into her skull, words too quick to decipher. She swayed, catching the doorframe. Shadows pressed against the warded glass of their jars, not like caged animals, but like eager children seeing a parent after too long apart. Her father closed the door, resealing them. The whispers cut off, leaving a ringing in Leora's ears. "You did well," he praised. "Now we attend the confluence above." They climbed to the surface. Noon hammered the plaza with brightness, yet Leora felt chilled. The confluence resembled a festival. Musicians plucked lutes, vendors sold honey fritters. In the center, elders arranged mirrors on tall frames, angled to catch and scatter sunlight across every facade, a symbolic strengthening of the pact. At the climax, they would tilt the mirrors skyward, returning surplus luminance to the sun. Yet the air smelled different, layered with humidity. Somewhere thunder rolled, so distant it could have been her heartbeat. Leora scanned the horizon. Nothing. Only that immaculate blue one saw on porcelain plates. Then a scrap of gray drifted above the eastern ridge. It was no larger than a sail unfurling, but it was cloud undeniable. The chatter around her frayed into silence. Musicians faltered. Counselor Isolde clapped sharply. "Continue," she barked. "One nothing cloud will not unmake grace." The crowd tried, yet eyes kept flicking skyward. The scrap grew, joined by others, stitched into a coverlet of velvet ash. Light dimmed. Not fully, but enough that Leora noticed outlines creeping outward, faint scallops at the feet of tables, timid smudges beneath flower pots. She flinched when something brushed her ankle. A tremor of coolness gone when she looked. Counselor Isolde marched to the mirror array and shouted, "Redirect!" Assistants rotated panels, funneling beams upward. The reflex luminance brightened the plaza, but cloud swallowed it whole. Malin grabbed Leora's wrist. "We go back down," he muttered. "We reinforce the vaults. Hurry!" A scream arrowed across the square. Ravel the Tanner pointed at his feet, horror wide in his eyes. His shadow had returned, shaggy and too large, flaring like a black cape. As Leora watched, it peeled free of the paving stones. The silhouette's head twisted toward Ravel, then its limbs elongated, claws sprouting where his fingers were only calluses. With a sound somewhere between a sob and a snarl, the shadow struck. Ravel's stomach opened, spilling what looked like tar instead of blood. He crumpled. Panic erupted. People fled, only to find their own shadows forming, fattening, detaching. Each silhouette, once independent, lunged for the warm flesh it had been denied. Leora's father yanked her into an alley. Their feet made clacks now. Sound had regained dimension. Malin's hand trembled. "We must seal the vault doors with star salt. If we can keep the largest shadows trapped. Maybe—" A shadow slithered around the corner, tall as a man but fluid, blade-edged at arms and teeth. Malin shoved Leora behind him. The shadow laughed, an awful dry rustle, and punched through Malin's chest, leaving nothing but a husk. His body collapsed like discarded robes. The shadow flexed new, brighter muscles stolen from Malin's vitality and turned on her. Leora ran. The alley vomited her onto High Street. Bodies sprawled. Others fled toward the Citadel. Shadows gorged, growing opaque. A dozen pursued fresh prey, yet some hovered over corpses, caressing faces with tenderness that made her bile rise. She fled downhill to the river path. If she could reach the sluice gates, Cross the drawbridge, she might escape into the salt flats. But something else tugged. A compass buried in her chest, pulling her not outward but downward, toward the mirror vaults, toward the things she had freed for a heartbeat. The clouds blanketed the town now, swirling as if aligned to a will. Rain had not begun, but thunder boomed close. She retraced her steps toward Luminar Hall. Twice, shadows lunged from doorways. Twice, sunlight lanced through gaps in cloud, slashing them with gold. They retreated, hissing. The sun was not fully gone. Daylight was bleeding, but not bled. In the vestibule she found Counselor Isolde clutching a mirror shard like a cleaver. Blood soaked her gown, her own, or someone else's. Upon seeing Leora, she advanced. You opened 13. On your orders, Leora retorted, backing down the stair. Where is everyone? Dead or eaten? Isolde's voice cracked. We were warned. Never let the sky forget its ruler, the parchment said. But we grew greedy. Took too many, kept them too long. Help me seal the vaults, Leora demanded. We still can. Isolde laughed, delirious. There are more shadows in town than people alive. Seal 1,000, 10,000. It will never be enough. The only cure is dawn. It's still day, Leora argued. We need sunlight, not dawn. No, Isolde whispered, eyes gone distant. True dawn, the rebirth of cycle. She slumped against the wall, blood dripping to form a widening puddle. A moment later, her shadow lifted from the floor and leisurely bent to devour her. Leora bolted downward. Mirrors along the corridor had cracked, spiderwebbed by concussions from above. She glimpsed fragments of herself, wild eyes, hair loose, face smudged with ash. For the first time in her life, a dim second version of her outline followed each reflection. Her personal darkness was returning, drawn by thunder like iron to lodestone. Vault doors ahead gaped open. 4, 6, 11. Their contents spilled across tiles in roiling fogs. The creatures here were less distinct, forming shapes only when consciousness snagged them. One stubby swirl became a wolf head that snapped at nothing. A taller smear twisted into a spear and fell apart again. Vault 13 still stood sealed. Leora sensed the press of minds inside, more organized, older, maybe older than sunlight itself. She approached, then stopped. On the lintel, someone had daubed words in tarry black. Keeper of Gates. Beneath, a sunstone lock glimmered. Her father's satchel lay on the floor nearby, torn open. A vial of star salt leaked white grains. She knelt, scooped a handful. The salt burned her palm, but not unpleasantly. Plan formed, simple as math. Open 13, lure the founders out, then detonate the star salt. If she eradicated the primal shadows, maybe the others would falter, or maybe she'd kill herself with them. Either outcome would be mercy. She pushed the key into the lock again. Inside the vault, darkness inhaled. All along Aramont, Leora heard shutters slam. Not wood shutters, but apertures in skulls opening to understanding. We hunger, sang 1,000 murmurs. Not just for flesh, but for place. The bargain was foul. Return us to the cycle and we shall rest. I don't trust you, Leora whispered. We do not lie. Shadows can warp but cannot fabricate. Restore balance or perish in tilt. Thunder cracked overhead, closer. What must I do? Shatter the mirrors. Let dusk fall. Night will come, then dawn, and we will find our humble shapes again. And the people you've slaughtered? There was a pause, like regret. Price already paid. Leora's fist clenched around star salt. She could still throw it, scorch them to nothing. Yet what if they were right? Could any town survive bereft of movement between dark and light? A memory bloomed. Her mother rocking her at age 5 beside an oil lantern, a gentle voice saying, "The world sleeps, so it can wake." Her mother had died in childbirth with Leora's brother, another sacrifice to the sun. Yet the words lingered like an unredeemed promise. Leora pocketed the salt. "I will break the mirrors," she said, "but you will not feed again tonight. Swear it." As oath, we bind it thus. A seal felt stamped into her chest, hot and final. She ran, sprinting up the spiral stairs, through the vestibule where Isolde's carcass lay gnawed white. A dozen shadows hissed, poised to pounce, but at her passing they recoiled, as if something older commanded them to let her through. Outside, rain had begun, fat drops that steamed on flagstones. The mirror ray in the plaza still stood, frames angled to sky, though clouds swallowed all reflection. Leora climbed the scaffold. Wind whipped her hair, rain stung. She located the pivot gear. A single lever could collapse the lattice, sending panes smashing downward. But a shadow leapt onto the scaffold, the one that had killed her father. Its edges were crisp now, eyes twin voids. It snarled, blocking the lever. She drew the leather pouch from her neck, the pinch of her own ancient silhouette. Without hesitation, she tore it open. A tendril of black seeped into her palm, cold and intimate. She flung it at the creature. The shard of her soul met the starved bulk of her father's shadow, and for a moment they fused. Then both unraveled, dissipating into gray drizzle. The walkway cleared. Leora heaved the lever. Mirrors tilted, trembled, then shattered. Glass rained in glittering sheets. Frames collapsed atop one another like silvered dominoes. The crash sounded across Aramont like a mountain split by lightning. Light changed. It was still day, but it was late day now. The sun no longer pinned. Clouds churned and parted to reveal a burnt ochre disk kissing the rim of the world. Dusk, true dusk, spilled amber across rooftops. For the first time in 36 years, Aramont knew evening. Shadows everywhere froze. Velvety violet bled through them, softening edges. No longer ravenous, they leaned once more against their owner's heels, tentative but true. Leora knelt on the scaffold, trembling. Her own shadow reattached, sliding beneath her like a faithful dog. A hole gaped in her heart where her father had stood, but feeling the cool shape hug her calves gave a comfort that startled tears from her eyes. The night proved gentle. Candles were lit, unconcerned about luring darkness. It was already here, but it lived now in partnership. The dead were gathered too, many, and mourned by torchlight. No one tried to banish the flame's flicker. At dawn, a hush fell as sunrise painted the valley with rose and gold. The survivors emerged to watch their shadows stretch long and glorious behind them before shrinking as the light climbed. People laughed, a desperate disbelieving sound, and some wept outright. The cypress outside the gate shook in a newborn breeze, its silhouette dancing on the dew-wet grass. Council seats stood empty. By unspoken agreement, the old compact was void. A new governance would take its cues from the turning earth, not from bottled dark. Leora ventured to the riverbank, where frogs sang in reeds. She opened her father's pouch and let the remaining star salt trickle into the stream. The water hissed, then settled, carrying the grains toward the sea, where all flavors are absolved. Her mother's words haunted and healed her. The world sleeps so it can wake. Behind her, footsteps. Rebel's young wife, pale but alive, holding a bundle. A child, perhaps only one night old or one lifetime. The woman's shadow rocked in rhythm with her own, cradling nothing but air. "Is it over?" the woman asked. "For now," Leora replied. "And maybe for good, if we remember." She looked at the sky. Fluffy white clouds drifted across squares of blue, casting dappled shade that strolled along roofs and chimneys. She smiled, recognizing at last that peace is not constant sun, but steady rhythm. When the next cloud passed over, Leora lifted her face into it, content to feel her shadow, warm and honest, settle beside her on the grass.